Well, thank you so much, Ron. That's a beautiful introduction, and I had to keep looking over my shoulder wondering, was he talking about someone else perhaps? Because that's very flattering. Thank you so much. What an absolute pleasure to be here in our nation's capital and here in Canberra. And thank you so much, Sarah, for everything you've done. And we're indebted to your efforts. And we all recognise also that it's been a very, very long time in the making, but what an immense success. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you also for coming, and I'm so grateful that I've been invited to speak to you today about the health aspects of veganism. But in a bit more detail, we're talking about plant-based nutrition. So it's important that I start off by really getting to the key aspect of where we are going wrong. We have food poisoning. There's no better way to describe it. We've had food poisoning since we've been born. The food poisoning that we have isn't in the sense a disease. It isn't in the sense an infection. The food poisoning we have is actually very, very clandestine. It's what goes into our food. It's what we buy in the stores. It's what we have on the street. It is the animal products that go into our food. It's food poisoning. It's killing us. It is causing us disease. It is causing us incapacity, morbidity, mortality. And it's a new form of poisoning. You see, 100 years ago, the limitation, or the major limitation, on our ability to live a productive life was war, famine, and infectious disease. These are things that we don't really face anymore. Per se, here living in Australia, the luckiest country on the planet, we don't have the degree to which our ancestors did those problems. We have a new disease, a new war. It's our diet. How sad, I said to a patient yesterday, how sad that now that we have been able to construct a society, hopefully without disease, famine and war, that we now have another hurdle to living a productive, wonderful life, and that is just merely what we eat. It is such a problem that it is now having a tremendous impact, not only on patients, but also on the greater community at large, and of course the health budget and everything else that goes with it. We have to understand the problem lies in processed foods. Now, what do I mean by processed foods? I mean anything you can go out to the store and you can buy that was made in a factory, that was made in machines, because it's what we add to the food. It's the added oils, the added salts, it's the added sugar. Now, we were told many, many years ago that olive oil is good for us, where we were told consume olive oil because of the Mediterranean diet. It's actually pure fat. 1 teaspoon of olive oil is equivalent to about 40 olives. And I always say to my patients, if you could have 40 olives today, you'd feel full after 10 or 20. But if you had 1 teaspoon of olive oil, you wouldn't even feel it. And that's an incredible, rich amount of energy. Now, your body doesn't know that we're living in 2017 anymore. Your body thinks that we could have a famine tomorrow. We could be living on the tundra, about to go into an ice age. So your body, very acutely, says, I'm going to store this energy. They've just given me so much energy in the form of this olive oil, in the form of fat, that I'm going to store it for a rainy day. But we don't have rainy days. We have access to food. We have access to nutrition. And we store this food, and the food overwhelms us. It goes into our muscles, it goes into our vessels, and it goes into our organs, and it starts to impair the function. This beautiful, beautiful hall, the organisation that Sarah has gone to make sure it works well, Nicole and the others here at Parliament House, if we started obstructing the entrances, if we started putting rubbish all over the place, 3 times a day, if we started pouring rubbish onto the floor, suddenly the mechanics of the hall would fail. It wouldn't happen instantly, but it would slowly, slowly, slowly break down. The human cell, be it the heart cell, muscle cell, skin cell, is no different. That cell is a functioning collection, an ensemble of many, many different components. But when we 3 times a day start poisoning that cell, it breaks down. Now, there are cleaners that will come in here tonight and they will clean this hall. And your cell has a cleaner. Your cell has an inbuilt mechanism, and you all know this. Because when you were about 8 years old and you'd fall over and you'd graze your knee and you'd find it to be all bloody and yucky, but then 3 days later, it's almost completely healed. That's the incredible power of the healing process. Your body has an internal capacity to heal and get better. But if we are poisoning it and obstructing it 3 times a day, that healing capacity is impaired and eventually destroyed. Processed foods drive that process. They drive that destruction. And the human body can only last so long. The common diseases that I face as a clinician: diabetes, type 2, hypertension, high blood pressure, strokes, vascular disease, obesity, fatigue, poor gut health. They are a relation, or they are directly related to the diet that people are eating. Now, my job, sometimes I have to suture up wounds. It occupies a very, very small capacity of my time. I'm dealing with food poisoning. So one of the key things then is that, okay, well, if I'm dealing with food poisoning, what components of these products are bad? Because it's not just for me to stand up here and say to you, well, animal products are bad. We heard just then from Sarah that the World Health Organization have finally got enough evidence to say processed meats are a carcinogen. They are, in fact, on the same level as cigarette smoking is to lung cancer. But even beyond that, they are destructive to the environment and the beautiful, beautiful voiceless souls that live on Earth with us. Animal protein, huge argument. Animal protein is just like plant-based protein. It's protein. It's building blocks. But you see, if I was to speak to the architect of this hall, and I said to them, what types of wood and what types of marble and what types of components did you use? There would be a very specific order, where we used 10 kilograms of this, we used about 3,000 bricks of this, we used about bits of wood for this number. Animal protein does something different. When it gets into our bodies, it overwhelms the body. It says, we are the only protein for you. The body can't accept that. The liver, which breaks down and recycles protein and then sends it to the kidney for excretion, is overwhelmed by these proteins. We need a smorgasbord. We can't just fill up this hall with marble. We need to be accommodating for what else the cell will require. Now, interestingly, a plant-based diet actually has all the beautiful ingredients of how to construct a wonderful cell. Plant-based proteins have a sulfur atom, and I will try my best not to get too technical, but they have a sulfur component to that protein, to that brick. What happens is the liver isn't very good at breaking down that sulfur, especially those proteins that have it, but it does a little bit, but not a lot. Now, those sulfur-based proteins are actually found in plant-based proteins, in plant-based foods, I should say, but in such a small number so that the liver and the kidney have that wonderful capacity to be able to deaminate it, that is, to be able to break it down. But we can't overwhelm them. When we see those proteins go into the diet, what actually happens is they stimulate an inflammatory cascade. They start the process of atherosclerosis, the process of heart disease, the process of hypertension. These proteins cause an inflammatory response in the body, and they lead to disease. They lead to cancer. Dairy, the most poisonous substance of all, if I had to choose one. Michael Clapper, the great Dr. Michael Clapper, famously says, you think about the purpose of dairy. It's designed to take a little baby calf and grow it into a big, huge calf, a 200-kilogram animal, within about a year or two. It does that because in the dairy are the growth factors, the hormones, the fats, the lipids, all the sugar that would wash over all those cells in that little beautiful baby calf and would say to it, grow, 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 grow. But I don't want my patients drinking that stuff as it washes over their hormone-sensitive cells, the breast, ovary, prostate, the pancreas. I don't want those organs to be told, grow, grow, grow. Human breast milk does it in a very, very subtle way, and only for a very short time. It makes no sense that as adults we would be telling these organs to replicate, replicate, grow, 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 replicate. Because they do. And they get stressed. And their replication process becomes impaired. And you get cancer. We see that, especially in the breast cancer movement, a lot of dairy is promoted within the breast cancer movement. In the animal agriculture movement, we'll use breast cancer as a way of saying we want to sponsor an event for breast cancer research. And I think it's like a tobacco company saying we're going to sponsor an event to raise money for asthma. It doesn't make sense. So if dairy is so bad, what is so good? Well, what is so good, everyone, is that it's never, ever too late. That's the truth. That's the take-home message from today. It's never, ever, ever too late. Because I have 80-year-old patients that come and see me. My best win, George from 3 years ago. An 80-year-old man who came and saw me with his beautiful granddaughter, and he said, look, Anthony, while you're seeing her, can you print off my scripts for me? High blood pressure, his insulin, etc. I said to him, do you want to be here for your granddaughter's wedding? Now, it might be a bit cruel to say that, but I haven't got time. I haven't got time to waste, let this guy go home and think about it. So I had a big chat to George. George today does not have type 2 diabetes. George does not require insulin. He requires no, what we call oral hypoglycemics, no medicine. I've got him off his blood pressure tablets, and I've taken him off his statin. And he's lost weight. And it was Monash Medical Centre who called me one day and said, this man's just come in with a collapse, and he keeps rabbiting on about something to do with you fixing his medication. And you know what happened? I forgot to take him off his blood pressure tablets. So when his blood pressure normalised, because the inflammation that was in his vessels had gone away, because he was no longer fighting a battle, and he was able to cure himself. His blood pressure tablets, which they don't care what your blood pressure starts at, they will shoot your blood pressure down, had fallen. And he went shopping at Chadstone, it's a shopping centre in Victoria, and he fell over. And I said, I know what's happened. Take him off his cover sill, he'll be fine. And the cardiologists almost have a heart attack when they hear that I've taken their patients off medication. But they don't need it. And this man now has a renewed sense of life. And all I did was send him to the healthy section of his supermarket. So it wasn't hard to see that the capacity of the human beings to actually repair and rejuvenate, to revitalise, is well within our grasp. How wonderful it is that you're all here, because you guys get to go forth with this information. And if you're not plant-based, you get to start today. You get to take on that role. We see this in our society now, with more and more people embracing a plant-based way of living and doing so well. So the components of a plant-based diet that work are really a whole foods way of eating. Now, why are whole foods so good? Whole foods come with the complete package. They come with fibre, they come with water, they come with sugar, they come with antioxidants, they come with everything that we need. Think about that olive. That olive has the fibre, the oils, it has the sugars, it has the minerals, the vitamins, it has everything that we need. And as it gets absorbed through our gastrointestinal tract, that oil gets broken down very slowly and the body doesn't freak out. And we absorb it, and we absorb everything else with it. Omega-3, I have to say something about omega-3. Why is there this fuss about omega-3? Well, let's quickly look at what omega-3 and omega-6 are. We hear about free fatty acids as omega-3 and omega-6. The analogies that I use to my patients are, again, like bricks of a wall. Omega-3 and omega-6 are like the bricks and the mortar of every cell in your body. They're healthy fats. And you do want some bricks and you do want some mortar, and you've got to get the balance right. If you just have a big wall of bricks with no mortar, it'll fall over. Vice versa. You can't just put mortar there and expect it to be still. So the omega-3 to omega-6 ratio, that ratio of bricks to mortar, excuse me, should be 1 omega-3 to 4 omega-6. So where does that leave us? That leaves us with the Western diet, not the Western Australian, but a Western Australian-American diet that is 1 omega-3 to about 40 omega-6. The ratio is completely off. And when it's off, omega-6 are very good at inflammation. They tell the body, ramp up the inflammatory process. This is awful. It just so happens that the whole foods that we eat, the potatoes, the corn, the leafy greens, have that beautiful ratio already worked out, 1 to 4. That's why we thrive on it. So you don't need omega-3 from fish. You don't need iron from meat, from flesh. You get that from plants. Calcium. You don't need calcium from anywhere else other than the plant foods. Why? Because we get it from the same place the cow gets it, from the grass. It's a mineral that's grown in the ground. I never see a case of calcium deficiency. I only see calcium deficiency when people are taking components of osteoporosis medication that actually draw excessively on the calcium pool of the body in an abnormal state. It's almost impossible to get calcium deficient. I did a speech at my practice to my GPs only about 2 weeks ago. And I was amazed when I mentioned that. They said to me, no. When you drink calcium in the milk, it gets absorbed. I go, no, it doesn't, guys. What about the parathyroid? What about vitamin D? There is a huge ensemble, an orchestra, that is making calcium absorption possible. We can't just neglect that. The body is that orchestra. It knows exactly what it's doing. If you're giving it too much calcium, it will come down on you like a ton of bricks. It really will. In fact, it was the policy, only till a couple of years ago, that in health we would recommend calcium supplements. We don't do that anymore because we now know that it causes heart attacks. It kills people. Because the calcium that is forced into the body, remember, thinks, hey, well, we could be in an ice age tomorrow. I need to store this calcium. And it stores it in the vessels. And those beautiful vessels close and close and close and close. When you're consuming animal products, you're consuming the cholesterol, you're consuming the saturated fat, you're consuming all the nasties that go in that piece of flesh, the nerves, the tendons, the blood vessels, the blood, all the inflammatory products that are in the meat, the white blood cells. I don't want my police force, the immune system, to be dealing with that. I don't want them to be dealing with that. I want them to be fresh, ready to fight viruses and bacterial infections that I catch in nature. I don't want to be making them stressed out by seeing different kinds of proteins that come from the meat product. So positively, it leads us onto the idea that, okay, if the whole foods packages work, how do they then end up benefiting us in the long term? The great news is that they benefit us very, very quickly. When I give patients my guide that I wrote, and it's a PDF, it's about 11 pages, and it will be available on my website, livinglongertoday.com. If you go to the site, there's a promo page and it says launching September 1. Unfortunately, I missed the launch date. But I am working on it, and when it does launch, everything I've just said to you, plus that guide, will be up there for free. You'll never have to pay a cent. It'll all be there. And one thing I say in this guide as a joke is that expect side effects from eating this way. And the side effects are weight loss, are less sweating, better sleep, increased energy. And it's all within the first week. And in fact, when I say to my patients, come back every week for about 4 or 5 weeks, and then I'll let you go to every second week, and then every month. I don't let them get away for at least 3 or 4 months until they are completely absorbed in it. But they come back at week 1 and they say, I feel fantastic, I feel great, I'm just getting out of bed early, but I'm sure I've definitely put on weight because I've been bloating on all the potatoes and corn that I've been eating. And I say, let's jump on the scales. And they've lost maybe 1 or 2 kilos. They never gain weight. You can't. The body will repair itself. Don't ever worry. I don't endorse exercise per se as a way to weight loss. I endorse it for health and recreation, but not for weight loss. You know, as a doctor, if I want to make you lose weight, I can do it very, very easily. I'll give you a massive amount of adrenaline. I'll give you thyroxine, I'll make all your cells turn on really, really, really fast. I'll starve you, and I'll say to you, I want you to jog around Parliament House 10 times a day. Your body will collapse. It'll burn everything. But believe it or not, when you start to eat well, your body will burn off the excess fat. It really, really will. My 80-year-old patient, George, he didn't start jogging around Parliament House, but the weight fell off him because his body, we weren't poisoning it anymore, 3 times a day, was able to repair itself. Just like when he was 8 and he fell over and grazed his leg, as I said. So the future is very, very positive for health. Very, very positive. And I'm exceptionally encouraged by seeing so many younger doctors, younger medical students coming forth and actually learning this. It's not the fault of the medical community. I'll defend my profession to the nth degree because it's not our fault that we don't know this. We have 5 to 6 years to absorb an enormous amount of information. And when I have to have brain surgery, touch wood I never do, but I want my neurosurgeon to not even worry about veganism. I want he or she to be so good at their job. Well then, if I expect specialties, I can't expect them to know everything. Where the strength lies is in the public, is in you. Because the way you feel being on a plant-based diet is the best way of advocating it, is the best way forward. So I encourage you all to please promote this way of eating to your friends. Have faith that there are doctors, that there are lawyers, that there are people out there who are also embracing this. People are feeling better on this way of eating. So it's wonderful to have been able to speak to you about this. I will end by reading a poem that I wrote some time ago, and I wrote this in 2015. Now, this was a poem I wrote. I'm a bit of a fan of wordplay, and I'm a fan of Dr. Seuss. And I wrote this poem one day in between consults, and I was just thinking about the dairy industry and what happens. And so I'm going to read you this very short poem, and we'll just see. There we go. That's the basis for the poem. This is called An Ode to Kindness. Some people say, who are all these animals, and why should I care? Why, they're just like you, if I'm really being fair. They are fathers and mothers and sisters for sure. They can even be your best friend, and so much more. Yet it may surprise you to know that they hurt and they cry. They even weep and they shiver, and sometimes they are shy. They seek out the warmth when it gets cold. They hope to live happily and die only when old. But something bad happens, something not so well known. We take their mother's milk before her kids are all grown. Milk meant for her children to make them nice and strong. We separate them forever. It's so cruel. It's just so, so wrong. For they have done us no harm and have caused us no pain. So why do we do this? Why can't we just refrain? Ah, but you can't be blamed for what you cannot see. For the blindfolds have been kept tight by the dairy industry. But unravel them now and let us become wise and allow a new way of eating to quickly arise. One based on kindness and found only in plants. The solution is potatoes, says Dr. Ants. So doctor's orders, grasp kindness with all your might and watch those beautiful animals sing with delight. You see, it's one of those occasions where a win-win rings true. And not just for the animals, but for our health too. Thank you so, so much. Stay there.